How does a business dinner turn into a public scene where my daughter is spoken to like she has no value? Why did my own son sit there, nod along, and act like she deserved it? How could they act so confident when they did not even know who owns the building they were in? My name is Stephen Calder. I am 58 years old. I do not look special. I dress plain. I speak slow. That is why people often think they can talk over me. That night started like a normal work dinner. My daughter, Nora, asked me to come. She said her company wanted to build trust with leadership and partners. She said it would help her career if I showed up and smiled. She also said she wanted me there because she did not feel safe going alone. Nora is 32. She works hard. She plans, fixes, and holds things together. She does not like drama. She does not chase attention. People like her often get used by people who do chase attention. The dinner was inside a private dining room on the first floor of a downtown building. The company rented the room for the evening. They chose it because it was high-end but quiet. Nora told me it would feel professional. I arrived early. I always arrive early. I like to see the room before the room sees me. The lobby was clean and bright. The staff at the desk greeted me politely. They did not act surprised to see me. That was normal. I nodded back and kept walking. I noticed the tenant group near the doors. They were dressed sharper than I was. They were loud in a careful way. They laughed too fast. They spoke as if they were already winning. Victor Lang stood in the middle of them. He was Nora's boss. I had met him once before, for less than a minute. That time he had smiled at Nora and called her a strong operator. He had spoken like he was doing her a favor by noticing her. Victor saw me and gave a quick look that did not stay long. He did not introduce himself. He did not ask how Nora was doing. He just gave a short nod like I was part of the furniture. My son, Owen, was there too. Owen is 29. He works at the same company, under a different team. He told Nora he had to be there. He said leadership likes to see unity. That sounded fine at first. Owen spotted me and gave a tight smile. He did not come over. He stayed close to Victor. He laughed when Victor laughed. He moved when Victor moved. It looked like Owen was trying to be seen. Nora arrived a few minutes later. She looked tired but neat. She carried herself straight. She kissed my cheek and whispered that she was glad I came. She also told me to keep my face calm no matter what happened. She said Victor liked to test people. She said he liked to see who would react. I told her I understood. I told her we would get through dinner and go home. We walked into the private room together. The table was set for about 12 people. The lighting was soft. The chairs were heavy. The room was quiet enough that you could hear small sounds, like forks and water being poured. The seating was already arranged. Nora's name card was not near the head of the table. It was placed on the side, closer to the wall. Owen's name card was close to Victor's seat. That told me a lot. Nora looked at her card for a second. She tried not to show anything. She sat down where she was told to sit. I sat beside her. I did not complain. I did not ask for another seat. I took it as information. People who play status games always reveal themselves in small ways first. More people arrived. Some were from Victor's team, some were outside partners. A few were managers who seemed nervous around Victor. They all gave him space like he needed extra air. Victor started the dinner like he owned the room. He spoke about culture and winning. He told a story about a deal he closed. He made sure everyone knew he was the reason it happened. People nodded and smiled. When Nora spoke, she spoke quietly. She added details. She talked about operations, timeline, and what the team did to keep things stable. Her words were calm and useful. Victor cut in right after her. He said Nora was good at support work. He said she was steady. He said that was rare. Then he said some people confuse steady with leadership. He said leadership needs presence. He said leadership needs a certain kind of confidence. He did not look at me when he said it. He looked at the rest of the table. He made it a lesson. Nora kept her face still. She asked a simple question about the next quarter. She asked about resources and staffing. She spoke like a professional. Victor answered, but he did not answer her question. He talked around it. He said the company would invest in people who prove they can carry weight. He said some people want support without showing loyalty. He said loyalty matters more than skill. Then he smiled, as if that was wise. Owen nodded. He nodded a little too much. He said he agreed that loyalty keeps a team strong. He said some people forget their role and make things hard. Nora looked down at her napkin for a moment. She kept her hands still on the table. I could see her breathing slow, like she was trying to stay in control. Victor shifted toward Nora again. He asked her about a recent project. Nora answered. She described the problem and how she solved it. She kept it short. Victor said her approach was safe. He said safe can be useful, but safe is not bold. He said bold people get remembered. He said support people get replaced. Then he laughed lightly, like he was joking. A few people laughed with him, not because it was funny, because it was safer to laugh than to sit in silence. Nora did not laugh. She said she cared more about results than being remembered. She said she wanted the company to run well. Victor leaned back. He said results are not enough if people do not know your place in the story. He said some people should focus on being helpful and stop trying to control the story. I watched Nora's face. I watched the muscles around her mouth. She was still calm, but I could see the effort. The waiter came and poured water. Plates arrived. The room filled with the sound of silverware. For a few minutes, people focused on eating. Then Victor started again. He asked everyone to share a lesson they learned in business. It sounded friendly. It was not. One manager spoke about teamwork. Victor praised him. Another person spoke about patience. Victor said it was a good point. Owen spoke about earning respect through alignment. Victor smiled at Owen and said he liked that thinking. Then Victor looked at Nora. He asked her what lesson she learned. Nora paused. She said she learned that clear systems protect people and projects. She said she learned that when rules are clear, work gets done without fear. Victor's smile stayed on his face, but his eyes changed. He said rules are helpful for people who cannot read a room. He said high performers do not need rules. He said they make their own path. He said the rest of the team should support that path instead of slowing it down. Nora said she supported high performance, but systems keep teams stable. She said stability prevents mistakes. Victor's voice got sharper. He said stability can be a cover for control. He said some people hide behind process because they are afraid of real pressure. Owen spoke right after that. He said pressure builds strong people. He said some people need to accept correction instead of taking everything personally. He said learning your place is part of growing up. When Owen said that, the room went quiet for a beat. It was not a long beat, but it was long enough. I looked at Owen. He did not look at me. He kept his eyes on Victor, like he was waiting for approval. Victor took that moment and pushed further. He said Nora was talented, but she needed to understand how power works. He said he could teach her if she was willing to be coached. He said he did not have time for resistance. Nora said she was open to feedback. She said she just wanted it to be respectful. Victor moved his hand fast across the table as he spoke. I do not know if he meant to do it. I do not know if it was careless or planned. But his hand hit a glass near his plate. The glass tipped, water spilled. The glass hit the table edge and fell. It broke on the floor. The sound was sharp. Everyone froze. A few small pieces slid under the table. The waiter stepped in quickly. People tried to laugh it off. Victor did not apologize to Nora. He did not even look at the broken glass first. He looked around the room and said it was nothing. He said accidents happen. He said everyone needed to relax. Then he looked at Nora and said she should not flinch when things get messy. He said that is part of working with leaders. Nora's face went pale. She did not argue. She did not raise her voice. She just nodded once, like she was trying to end it. Owen said something again. He said Nora needed to toughen up. He said she needed to learn her place. I felt something cold move through my chest. It was not rage. It was not a desire to shout. It was clarity. I understood the shape of the room. I understood the game. Victor was not just being careless. He was testing how far he could go in public. Owen was not just being quiet. He was choosing a side. Nora looked at me for the first time in several minutes. Her eyes asked me not to explode. They asked me not to make it worse. They asked me to help her leave with dignity. I placed my napkin on the table. I stood up slowly. I said I needed a moment. I said I would step out. Victor barely reacted. He acted like my movement did not matter. I walked out of the private room. The air in the hallway felt cooler. The noise behind the door became muted. The carpet softened my steps. I kept walking until I was out of sight of the dining room entrance. I stopped near a service hallway where staff moved quietly with trays and carts. I took out my phone. My hand did not shake. I did not rush. I called one number. Priya answered. She was the building's general manager. I kept my voice even. I told her there was an incident in the private dining room. I told her it involved a tenant group. I told her it involved a broken glass and conduct toward a guest. Priya listened. She did not ask me to calm down. She did not tell me to handle it privately. She asked simple questions. She asked where it happened and who was present. I gave her the details I could confirm. I did not add extra feelings. I did not guess motives. I only said what happened. Priya's voice became more formal. She said she understood. She said the building had a process for incidents during tenant events. She said she would handle it through policy. I ended the call. I stood in the hallway for a moment and listened to my own breathing. Then I turned back toward the private room, not to argue, but to bring my daughter out. I stayed in the service hallway for a few seconds after the call. I let the cold feeling settle into something useful. Then I walked back toward the private room. When I opened the door, the room was louder again. People were pretending nothing happened. The waiter was already sweeping small pieces from the floor. Victor was talking as if he had just finished telling a clever story. Owen was smiling beside him. Nora looked at me right away. Her eyes were steady, but I could see the strain in her face. I sat back down without making a scene. I did not want to give Victor a new reason to perform. Victor glanced at me, then continued his talk. He spoke about leadership and pressure. He spoke about how some people cannot handle high standards. He did not say Nora's name, but he kept looking in her direction. Nora ate a few bites and stopped. She held her fork like she did not trust her own hand. She tried to smile when someone asked her a basic question, but her smile was thin. I leaned slightly toward her and asked if she wanted to leave. I did not ask loudly. I did not ask in a way that made it about Victor. I asked like a father asking about a headache. Nora nodded once. I placed my napkin down again. I stood slowly. I said we needed to go. I said it was getting late. Victor lifted his eyebrows like he was amused. He said something about early nights and sensitive schedules. He made it sound like a joke. I did not answer him. I did not correct him. I just helped Nora stand up. Owen finally looked at me then. He asked where we were going. His voice sounded polite, but the question felt like a challenge, like he wanted me to explain myself in front of Victor. I told him we were leaving. I told him he could stay if he wanted. I kept my tone flat. Owen looked at Victor for a second, then looked back at me. He said Nora should not take things personally. He said she needed to build thicker skin. Nora did not reply. She kept her eyes down and picked up her coat. I guided her out of the room. Nobody stopped us. Nobody followed. They let us leave because they believed we did not matter. In the lobby, the air felt different. It was open and quiet. Nora took a deep breath, like she had been holding it for an hour. I asked her if she was okay to walk. She nodded again, but her steps were small. We reached the doors and went outside. The city noise washed over us. Nora's shoulders dropped, like she had been carrying weight that was not hers. We walked to my car. When we got inside, she stared at her hands for a moment. Her fingers were tight, then they relaxed. I did not start a lecture. I did not ask why she allowed it. I knew the answer. People allow disrespect when they are trying to survive a system that punishes honesty. I asked Nora to tell me what had been happening. I told her I wanted facts, not guesses. I told her she could take her time. At first, she said it was nothing. She said it was just Victor's style. She said he did it to everyone. Then she looked at the window and said it was not true. She said he did it more to her than to others. She said he did it in public, not in private. She said he always chose moments when people were watching. I drove slowly. I kept the car quiet. I let her talk. Nora said it started about 8 months earlier. Victor came in with a new plan and new energy. He spoke about changing the company and moving faster. He wanted quick wins. He wanted big presentations. He liked to speak in short lines that sounded strong. Nora said she focused on the work. She built systems. She kept projects from slipping. At first, Victor praised her in private. He told her she was reliable. He told her she was the kind of person who kept things stable. But then the tone shifted. She said the first time it happened was in a weekly meeting. She explained a risk. She said the plan needed one more step to avoid problems later. Victor smiled and said she was being too careful. He said careful people slow the team down. Nora said she did not fight. She adjusted her language. She started presenting risks as options. She thought that would help. It did not help. She said Victor began to use her as a warning. If someone asked a hard question, Victor would point at Nora and say, "That kind of thinking belongs in operations, not leadership." He said it like a lesson. People laughed because they wanted to stay on his side. Nora said the worst part was that Victor would take her work and wrap it in his own words. He would present a solution she built and act like it appeared in his mind. He would thank the team in general, but he would not name her. She said she tried to address it respectfully. She asked him privately if she could be credited when she delivered key work. Victor said credit is earned through presence. He said she needed to learn how to sell herself. He said he could teach her if she stopped being defensive. Nora said she kept notes after that. Not official notes, just dates and small details. She said she did it because she felt like she was losing her sense of what was real. I listened and kept driving. Then Nora brought up HR. She said she went to Marla twice. The first time, Marla smiled and spoke softly. Marla said she cared about employee wellness. She said she wanted everyone to feel safe and respected. She said she would look into it. Nothing changed. The second time, Marla asked Nora if she might be misreading Victor's leadership style. She asked if Nora had considered how her tone might affect others. She asked if Nora had tried to align with Victor's vision. Nora said she left that office feeling smaller than when she entered. I asked her why she stayed. I did not ask it like blame. I asked it like a practical question. Nora said she stayed because she had a team relying on her. She said she stayed because she needed the income. She said she stayed because she believed if she worked harder, respect would return. I told her respect does not return when it was never a priority. I told her some people use respect like a reward, not a baseline. We reached her apartment building. I walked her upstairs. Inside her kitchen, the lights were warm. The place smelled like dish soap and coffee. The normal feeling of her home made the dinner feel even worse, like it belonged to a different world. Nora sat at the table and stared at the empty chair across from her. She said she kept imagining what it would feel like to walk into work tomorrow. She said she could already hear Victor's voice in her head. I asked where Owen fit into all this. Nora exhaled slowly. She said Owen changed after Victor started praising him. She said Victor invited Owen to small meetings. She said Owen began to talk like Victor. He began to repeat Victor's phrases. He began to treat Nora like she was behind him. Nora said she tried to talk to Owen privately. She told him she needed support. She told him Victor was crossing lines. Owen told her she was too sensitive. He told her this is how high-level work is. He told her she needed to stop making everything personal. Hearing that made my stomach tighten, not with anger, with recognition. I remembered Owen as a teenager. He was always watching rooms. He wanted to belong. He wanted approval. He hated being seen as ordinary. After his mother and I separated, Owen took it hard. He felt like the ground shifted under him. Nora handled it by building routines. Owen handled it by chasing control. He learned to attach himself to whoever looked strongest. I did not say this to Nora in that moment. I did not want to turn her pain into a family history lesson. I just nodded and listened. Nora told me something else. She said Victor sometimes made comments about our family. He would ask why she needed her father at events. He would say it was unusual. He would say grown professionals should stand alone. Nora said she always answered calmly. She said she told him family support is normal. Victor would smile and change the topic, but he never stopped. I asked Nora if anyone else saw what was happening. She said some coworkers did, but they were afraid. She said one colleague once apologized quietly after a meeting. The colleague said Victor likes to pick a target and keep them in that spot. The colleague said it could be someone else next month, but for now it was Nora. I told Nora that fear is how bad behavior spreads. I told her people learn what the room rewards. After she calmed a bit, I offered to drop something off to her office the next day. I told her I wanted to see the environment for myself, with my own eyes. She hesitated, then agreed. The next day I went to the tenant floor around midday. I carried a small folder of printed notes Nora needed. Nothing secret, nothing dramatic, just work items. The office was open and bright. People sat in lines of desks. There were glass rooms for meetings. There were posters on the walls about values and teamwork. I watched the flow for a few minutes before I walked to Nora's desk. People moved quickly, but their eyes were careful. They looked up when certain managers walked by. They relaxed when those managers left. Nora stood up and thanked me quietly. She looked around before speaking, like she expected someone to listen. Owen appeared a moment later. He greeted me like a coworker, not like a son greeting his father. He asked why I was there. His tone was controlled. He looked past me toward the meeting rooms. I told him I was helping Nora with a small thing. I kept it simple. Owen said Nora needed to stop making Victor feel challenged. He said Victor wants results, not debate. He said Nora should learn how to be useful without pushing. I asked Owen if he heard himself. I asked if he understood what he was saying about his own sister. Owen's expression tightened. He said he was being realistic. He said I was making it emotional. He said Nora had to learn the structure of the place. Nora stood very still beside her desk. Her face stayed calm, but her eyes looked tired. Victor walked out of a glass meeting room at that moment. He saw me. He smiled like he was greeting an audience. Victor shook my hand quickly. He said it was good to see me. He said Nora was lucky to have support. He said many people do not have that kind of help. He said it like support was a weakness. I nodded and did not argue. I told him I hoped Nora's work was being recognized properly. I kept my voice polite. Victor's smile remained, but his eyes cooled. He said Nora was valuable in her lane. He said some people need a lane to avoid confusion. He said the company rewards people who know where they fit. Then he turned slightly toward Owen and praised him for being aligned. He said Owen understood how the world works. Owen stood straighter when Victor said that. His chest lifted like he had been waiting for those words. I looked at Nora. She did not react. She just lowered her gaze. When I left the office, the feeling stayed with me. It was not just workplace pressure, it was a pattern. Victor built loyalty by teaching people to step on someone else. Owen learned that lesson too quickly. That evening, my phone buzzed with a new message in our family group chat. Owen wrote that Nora should stop escalating things. He wrote that she needed to accept correction and stay in her place in the team. I read it twice. Then I set the phone down and sat quietly because I understood something clear. This was not only about Victor. This was also about what my son was willing to become to feel important. The next few days felt slow on the surface, but fast inside my head. I went to work, answered emails, paid bills, and kept my voice steady. But my mind stayed on Nora and on what I saw in that office. Nora tried to act normal. She went in early, she stayed late. She did the work nobody noticed until it failed. When she came home, she sounded tired in a quiet way. She did not cry, she did not shout, she just spoke less and less. One evening, she called me from her car before she went inside. She said Victor had moved a meeting without telling her. She said the meeting was about a project she managed. She said she only found out because she saw a calendar invite on someone else's screen. She said she walked into the room anyway, even though she was not invited. She said Victor looked surprised for half a second, then smiled. She said he told the room they would keep it short. She said he spoke about the project as if it was his personal win. She said he mentioned the team in general, but he did not mention her. She said he then asked her to take notes, even though she was the one who built the plan. I asked her what she did. She said she took notes. She said she did not want to give him a reason to call her difficult. She said she just wanted the meeting to end. That night, I sat in my home office with the light low. I did not open any big files. I did not print anything. I just wrote down the date and what Nora told me. I wrote it in plain words. I wrote who was there, what was said, and what changed. I did it like I was building a simple map. 2 days later, Nora called again. This time her voice was flat. She said Victor had asked for a one-on-one talk. She said Marla from HR was there too. She said they called it a coaching session. Nora said Victor told her she needed to adjust her attitude. He said she was not showing enough alignment. He said her questions made leadership look uncertain. He said she should stop bringing up risks in meetings because it made the room feel heavy. Marla added that some people perceived Nora as tense. Marla said Nora should work on her communication style. Marla said this was meant to help her succeed. Nora said she kept her voice calm. She said she asked for clear expectations and clear examples. She said Victor did not give examples. She said he spoke in general words and kept turning it back on her personality. Then Nora said something that made my stomach go cold again. She said Victor hinted that her role could change if she did not improve. She said he mentioned the idea of moving her to a smaller scope, something less visible. He said it would be better for the team. Nora told me she left that room feeling like she had been placed on a shelf, not fired, not praised, just stored. I asked her where Owen was in all this. Nora said Owen knew. She said Owen had been in leadership circles lately. She said Owen told her she should accept the message and keep her head down. I did not argue with Nora about Owen. I could hear she was already tired. I told her to come over the next day for dinner. I told her I would cook something simple and we could talk in person. Nora arrived the next day with her shoulders tight. She ate slowly. She kept her phone face down on the table. Every time it buzzed, her eyes flicked to it, then away. I asked her if Victor's behavior was only in meetings. She said no. She said he did it in small moments too. She said he used friendly words while sending a cold message. She said he would walk past her desk and ask if she was keeping up. She said he would say it loud enough for others to hear. She also told me about the business dinner. She said Victor had invited her because he wanted to show partners who was in charge. She said he placed her on the side because it looked right to him. She said he wanted her visible, but not central. Then Nora said she noticed something during the dinner that she had not told me before. She said when the glass broke, Victor looked around the room first. He did not look at the floor. He did not look at the waiter. He looked at faces. She said he was checking who would laugh, who would stay quiet, and who would look away. That detail mattered to me. It meant the broken glass was not the main issue. It was a tool. It was a signal. After Nora went home, I sat in my car for a while before I drove back. I watched people walk across the street. I watched lights turn on in office windows. I felt a strange calm, like my body had already made a decision before my mind finished naming it. The next morning, I had to stop by the building again for my own work. I walked through the lobby like any other day. I nodded at the front desk. I kept my pace even. As I waited near the elevator bank, I saw Victor and 2 colleagues. They were not near Nora's floor. They were headed toward the parking levels. Victor's voice carried in the open lobby. He was telling a story about someone who could not handle pressure. People were laughing in that tight, obedient way. I did not follow them to confront them. I followed them because I wanted to understand their pattern. I kept distance. I walked like I had somewhere else to be. In the parking garage, the sound changed. It was concrete and echo. Footsteps sounded harder. Voices bounced off pillars. The air smelled like oil and cold metal. Victor stopped near a row of cars and kept talking. He spoke about Nora without using her name. He described her like a type of person. He said people like that are good for keeping the machine running. He said they should not try to sit in the driver's seat. One colleague asked if Nora would cause trouble. Victor said she would not, because she needed her job. He said she would bend before she broke. He said if she complained, HR would handle it. He spoke as if HR existed to protect him. Then Owen appeared from the elevator door into the garage. He walked straight to them. He greeted them with a smile that did not reach his eyes. He stood slightly behind Victor, like a student behind a teacher. Victor spoke to Owen as if Owen was part of his inner circle. Victor mentioned that Nora was getting a lesson in reality. He said she needed to learn how the place works. Owen replied in the same tone. He said Nora had always been emotional. He said she needed structure. He said sometimes people need to be put in their lane for their own good. Hearing my son speak that way felt like a door closing. Not loudly, just firmly. It was not just about Nora anymore. It was about what Owen was willing to trade for approval. I stayed behind a pillar and listened without moving. I did not record anything. I did not pull out my phone. I did not want to make a mistake. I just listened and stored it in my memory with the date and time. They broke apart and walked to their cars. Owen laughed at something Victor said. It sounded practiced. I walked back to my car slowly. My hands were steady. My heartbeat was normal. That was the moment I understood I would not solve this with a family talk or a polite request. Some people do not respond to kindness. They respond to consequences. That evening I went up to the rooftop terrace of the building. It was open and quiet. The city felt far away, even though it was right there. Wind moved across the concrete. The lights below looked calm, like a map. I leaned on the railing and let my thoughts line up. I did not imagine yelling at Victor. I did not imagine making a scene. That kind of response feeds people like him. It gives them a stage. Instead, I thought about systems. I thought about process. I thought about how order is built when people agree to rules. I thought about how rules matter most when someone thinks rules do not apply to them. I also thought about Nora. She deserved to work without being pushed into silence. She deserved to be credited for her effort. She deserved to be spoken to like an adult professional. And I thought about Owen. I did not hate him. I did not want to punish him for the sake of punishment. But I could not pretend his choices were small. If he could speak about his sister like that in a parking garage, he could do worse later. He was learning a habit. When I left the rooftop, I did not feel heavy. I felt clear. At home, I opened a drawer in my home office. Inside were simple tools, notebooks, old calendars, and folders from past work. I pulled out a clean notebook and wrote a short list of dates. I wrote the dinner date. I wrote the meeting change date. I wrote the coaching session date. I left space after each line. I also wrote down the names of people I needed to speak to, not for gossip, but for structure. I wrote Priya's name. I wrote Thomas's name. I wrote Celia's name. I did not write any threats. I did not write any dramatic promises. I wrote only what I could verify and what I needed to confirm. Over the next few days, Nora kept me updated. She said Victor started acting even more relaxed. She said he spoke about future plans as if nothing could touch him. She said he joked about how people should not take things so seriously. She said Owen began to avoid her in the office. When he could not avoid her, he spoke like a manager, not a brother. He acted like she was a risk he needed to manage. One afternoon, Nora told me something that finally crossed the last line. She said Victor had assigned her to prepare materials for a presentation, then told someone else to present them. She said she was asked to sit in the back during the presentation and be ready to answer questions if needed. She said after the presentation, Victor praised the presenter. Victor said the presenter had strong presence. He said this is what leadership looks like. Then he glanced at Nora and said some people are better behind the scenes. Nora told me she smiled and nodded because that is what she has trained herself to do. But when she got back to her desk, her hands shook. She said she went to the restroom and stared at herself in the mirror. She said she did not recognize her own face for a moment. She said she looked like someone who was trying to disappear to avoid being pushed again. That night, I drove to her place without calling first. I brought groceries. I told her I would cook. I did not ask her to explain again. I just filled the space with normal things. Chopping vegetables, boiling water, setting plates. While we ate, Nora asked me a simple question. She asked if she was doing something wrong. She asked if she was weak. I told her she was not weak. I told her she was being pressured by people who confuse control with leadership. I told her she had value, even if her workplace refused to name it. Nora asked what she should do next. She asked if she should quit. I told her not to rush. I told her we would handle this properly. I told her we would use the systems that exist for a reason. I told her we would focus on facts, not feelings. She looked at me and nodded, like she wanted to believe that order still mattered. When I got home, I opened my calendar again. I circled another date. Then I placed my phone on the desk and stared at it for a long moment. I was not waiting for permission. I was preparing for a process. I was preparing to stop asking people to respect my daughter and start requiring them to. The week after that felt like a test of patience. Victor did not slow down. Owen did not soften. Nora did not suddenly get treated better. In fact, the more Nora stayed calm, the more confident they became. I stayed calm, too. I kept my face neutral when people spoke. I kept my voice level when I answered. I did not give anyone the satisfaction of seeing me tense. At home, I turned my home office into a quiet planning space. Not a dramatic one, just practical. I cleared my desk. I placed one notebook in the center. I put a pen beside it. I wrote dates, times, and short facts. I wrote only what I could confirm. I also made a rule for myself. I would not argue in circles. I would not chase apologies. I would not beg for basic respect. I would only build a clear timeline and follow proper steps. Nora started sending me small updates each day. She did not send long stories. She sent simple points. She told me when a meeting moved. She told me when her name was removed from something. She told me when Victor's tone shifted in a group setting. I told her to keep it simple, like a work log. I told her not to guess motives. I told her not to add extra emotion in writing. I told her to focus on what happened and who saw it. Nora said she understood. On Tuesday, Nora told me Victor called another coaching talk. She said Marla was present again. She said they told her they were watching her fit on the team. She said they warned her about being seen as difficult. Nora said she asked for clear examples again. She said Victor gave general words again. She said Marla framed it as support again. She said she left the room feeling like the floor had moved slightly under her. That night I wrote the date and the basic points in my notebook. I did not write any anger. I wrote it like a report. On Wednesday, I met Priya for coffee across the street from the building. We did not sit close to other people. We kept our voices low, not because we were hiding, but because that is how professionals speak when details matter. Priya asked me to describe the dinner incident again. I repeated it the same way I did on the phone. I said there was public disrespect toward a guest. I said a glass broke during the interaction. I said the mood changed in the room. I said it happened inside the building during a tenant event. Priya nodded as she listened. She said the building had standard steps for incidents in event spaces. She said they take safety and conduct seriously because it affects staff and guests. She said she could not discuss tenant details casually, but she could ensure the proper process existed. I told her I was not asking for special treatment. I told her I only wanted fair treatment. I told her I wanted the building to follow its own standards. Priya said she understood. She said the next step was to gather basic information and route it correctly. She said there were people responsible for reviewing what happened in those spaces. She said it mattered that the event was inside the building. She did not show me anything. She did not hand me papers. She did not play any footage. She just spoke about how systems work when someone triggers them properly. When I left the coffee shop, I felt calmer than before. Not because I thought it would be easy, but because I knew the path did not require a loud fight. It required patience and precision. That afternoon, I spoke with Thomas, the head of building security. I did not corner him. I did not demand anything. I asked for a short meeting and framed it as a policy question. Tomas met me near the security office. He was quiet and steady. He spoke like a man who sees many situations and does not get pulled into drama. I told him I wanted to understand how incidents in event rooms were handled. I told him I wanted to understand what steps exist, how reports are made, and how the building protects staff and guests. Tomas explained in general terms. He said there are cameras in common spaces and near certain areas. He said they follow strict rules about who can access sensitive information. He said when an incident is reported, there is a review path. I asked if the building takes damage and safety seriously even if the tenant is important. Tomas said importance does not change policy. He said it can change how people behave, but it should not change the rules. That sentence stayed with me. I thanked him and left. I did not ask for favors. I did not ask for private access. I only wanted to know that the building had a spine. On Thursday, Nora called me during her lunch break. She said Victor had started acting like the dinner never happened. She said he made small jokes in meetings. She said he spoke about team strength and pressure again. She said he looked at her each time he said it. She also said Owen was becoming more visible. Owen had started speaking first in meetings. He had started using Victor's phrases. He had started correcting other people in the same style. Nora said it felt like Owen was practicing. I told Nora I saw it too. I told her it was painful, but it was also information. I told her people reveal themselves when they think there is no cost. That evening, my grandson Eli came by with Nora. Eli is 11. He is the kind of kid who watches adults like they are puzzles. He does not use big words. He uses clean questions. Eli asked why his mom looked tired all the time. He asked why she did not smile like before. He asked if her work was being mean to her. Nora tried to brush it off. She said she was just busy. She said she was fine. Eli looked at me and asked if grown people are allowed to be unfair. I told him grown people can be unfair, but they are not supposed to be. I told him there are rules for a reason. I told him when someone breaks rules, there are steps to correct it. Eli nodded like he accepted that. Then he asked if the steps always work. I did not lie to him. I told him steps work best when people follow them and when the truth is clear. I told him we were going to keep things clear. After they left, I sat in my home office again. I looked at my calendar. I looked at the dates I had written. I looked at the spaces I left blank for future notes. Then my phone buzzed. It was Owen calling. I answered. Owen's voice was polite. He asked how I was doing. He asked if Nora was okay. The question sounded careful, like he was reading from a script. I told him Nora was under pressure. I told him the dinner was not acceptable. I told him he had a choice in how he acted. Owen said Victor was a high performer. Owen said Victor was intense but effective. Owen said Nora needed to adapt. Owen said I was making it bigger than it was. I told Owen I was not making anything bigger. I told him I was making it clear. I told him respect is not a luxury. I told him it is a baseline. Owen said I did not understand how modern work works. Owen said people who push back get left behind. Owen said Nora should accept guidance and stop fighting the structure. I asked Owen if he truly believed his sister deserved to be spoken to like that. Owen paused, then said Nora needed to learn her place in the team. He said it again, as if repeating it would make it true. I told him I heard him. I told him I hoped he would think carefully about what he was aligning with. I told him I would not argue about it on the phone. Owen said I was being stubborn. He said I was protecting Nora too much. He said it would hurt her career. I ended the call calmly. I did not slam the phone down. I just set it on the desk. The next day, Nora told me something else. She said Victor's team was planning a major internal meeting. She said it was framed as a leadership alignment session with partners and senior staff. She said it would be held in a formal space inside the building. Nora said Victor was excited about it. She said he was talking like it would be his moment. She said Owen was acting like it was his moment too. I asked Nora how she knew where it would be held. She said the event team accidentally included her on part of the planning chain, then removed her later. She said she saw the location before she was removed. I did not ask her to forward anything. I did not want her to do anything that might be framed as improper. I only asked her to write down what she saw and when she saw it. Nora agreed. That afternoon, I met Celia, my attorney, in her conference room. The meeting was quiet and simple, no drama, no raised voices. Celia asked me to explain the situation as if I were explaining it to someone who did not know our family. She asked me to separate family pain from workplace conduct. She asked me to keep it factual. I did. Celia listened and nodded. She said patterns matter. She said timelines matter. She said third-party process matters. She said when someone builds power through public disrespect, the cleanest response is to remove their ability to hide behind charm. She told me to stay patient. She told me to avoid emotional messages. She told me to avoid public arguments. She told me to let process do the heavy lifting. I told her that was my intention. I told her I wanted everything done properly and cleanly. When I left Celia's office, I drove back toward the building, but I did not go inside. I parked across the street and sat for a few minutes. I watched people enter through the lobby doors. I watched them swipe access cards. I watched them greet staff. I thought about the difference between social confidence and real leverage. Victor had social confidence. He could fill a room with his voice. Owen was trying to borrow that confidence. But real leverage comes from systems. Real leverage comes from policies, obligations, and responsibility. Real leverage comes from the fact that buildings, companies, and reputations have to protect themselves. That night, Nora called again. Her voice was calm, but I could tell she was holding herself together. She said Victor had assigned her more work, then spoke about her like she was only support. She said he told her to prepare materials, then told her she would not be presenting. She said he told her to stay close in case someone needed answers. I asked her how she responded. She said she nodded. She said she did the work. She said she did not want to give him a reason to label her. I told her she was not wrong for staying calm. I told her calm is a strength when you are building a clear record. I told her she did not need to win an argument in a meeting. She needed to survive long enough for truth to have a place to stand. Nora was quiet for a moment. Then she asked me if I really thought the systems would protect her. I told her systems do not protect people by themselves. People have to activate them. People have to insist on them. People have to stop accepting informal harm as normal. I told her we were going to insist the right way. After that call, I went back to my desk and added 2 more lines to my notebook. Then I closed it. I turned off the light in my office. I washed a cup in the kitchen. I checked my front door lock like I always do. I went to bed at a normal time. From the outside, nothing looked different. But inside, the positioning had begun. I kept my days normal on purpose. I woke up at the same time. I ate the same simple breakfast. I took the same routes. I wanted my mind clear, not flooded. Nora kept working. She did not make a scene. She did not post online. She did not threaten anyone. She did not even raise her voice. She did what she always did. She carried the load and tried to stay polite. Victor noticed her silence and took it as permission. He became lighter, almost cheerful. Nora told me he started using her name less in meetings. He would refer to her work as the ops layer or the support piece. He spoke like she was a tool, not a person. People around him followed his lead because it felt safer. Owen followed even faster. He started copying Victor's rhythm. He started speaking in short, sharp lines. Nora said Owen would correct her in public, even over small details, even when she was right. He did it with a smile. That smile hurt more than open anger would have. I did not confront Owen in person. I knew that would turn into a family argument, and family arguments are noisy. Noise was not my plan. Instead, I stayed on the path I chose. I kept building a clean timeline. I kept my notes brief. I kept my language neutral. I wrote what happened, where it happened, and who was present. On Monday, Priya called me and asked if I could meet her for 10 minutes in the building lobby. She did not say much on the phone. She did not need to. Her tone told me the building was moving in a formal direction. I arrived early again. The lobby looked the same as always. Polished floors, quiet lighting, people passing through like nothing in the world could change. Priya met me near a side seating area. She spoke in a steady voice. She said the building takes incidents seriously, especially when they happen during events in the building. She said there is a process, and she would follow it the same way every time. I thanked her. I told her I did not want special treatment. I told her I wanted consistent treatment. Priya nodded. She said consistency is the whole point. She also said something simple that stayed with me. She said the building is not a stage for anyone's private power games. She said the building is a workplace for many people, including staff. We did not talk long. We did not discuss personal feelings. We did not talk about revenge. It was not that kind of meeting. No, it felt like 2 adults choosing order over noise. After that, I met Celia again. This time I brought my notebook. I did not hand it over like I was demanding action. I simply used it to keep my story clean and consistent. Celia listened and asked careful questions. She asked me to separate what I knew from what I assumed. She asked me to be honest about what I did not see directly. She asked me to keep the focus on conduct, safety, and proper steps. I told her I could do that. I told her I was not interested in personal debates. I told her I wanted the right institutions to do what they are meant to do. Celia said that approach tends to work because it gives people fewer places to hide. She said when someone relies on charm, they struggle in a room where facts are the main language. Over the next few days, Nora and I practiced something simple. Not speeches, not dramatic lines, just short, clear statements she could say if someone tried to twist her words. If asked why she reported, she would say she wanted a respectful workplace. If asked why she stayed quiet, she would say she kept her focus on work. If someone tried to blame her personality, she would say she was talking about conduct, not feelings. If someone demanded she apologize, she would say she was open to feedback delivered with respect. We kept it basic because basic is hard to attack. Nora's son, Eli, came by one evening while we were talking. He sat at the table and drew in a notebook while we spoke softly. At one point, he asked if his mom's boss was still being mean. He used the word mean because children do not hide behind fancy terms. Nora smiled at him and said she was handling it. Eli looked at me and asked if handling it means the mean person stops. I told him handling it means we do the right steps so the right people can fix it. He frowned and asked why grown people need steps to be kind. I did not have a perfect answer. I told him some grown people forget the basics. I told him rules exist to remind them. That night, after Nora left, I looked at my calendar again. The leadership alignment session Nora mentioned was getting closer. She confirmed the date and time from a schedule she saw briefly before she was removed from it. She did not forward anything. She did not take anything. She simply wrote down what she saw and when she saw it. I also noticed the building schedule changing in small ways, extra staff in the lobby, a few quiet signs near conference areas. It looked like the building was preparing for a formal tenant gathering. Victor was preparing too. Nora said he was talking about it like a victory lap. He told people it would be a big day. He told people partners would be there. He told people leadership would see who mattered. Owen became even more eager. He started dressing sharper. He began coming in earlier. Nora said he spoke less to her unless it was to correct her in front of others. It was like he was rehearsing who he wanted to be. 2 nights before the meeting, Owen called me again. His voice was polite at first. He asked how I was. He asked about Eli. He asked about Nora, as if he was doing a routine check. Then he shifted. He said he heard Nora was making things complicated. He said Victor was frustrated. He said frustration from Victor could limit Nora's future. He said I should tell Nora to stop pushing. I told Owen I was not managing Nora for Victor. I told him Nora was an adult professional. I told him she had the right to be treated with respect. Owen sighed like I was naive. He said respect is earned. He said Nora was not earning it because she kept challenging leadership. I asked Owen a direct question. I asked him if he believed it was acceptable to speak to his sister the way Victor spoke to her at the dinner. Owen did not answer right away. Then he said Nora needed to learn her place in the team. He said it like a final truth. I told Owen I heard him. I told him I hoped he would remember this moment later. I told him I would not argue more. Then I ended the call. After the call, I sat for a long time without moving. Not because I was lost, because I was steady. I was watching my own emotions pass like weather. I did not need to chase them. The day before the meeting, Nora and I met in the coffee shop across from the building. We sat near the window. We watched people go in and out. Nora's hands were calm on her cup, but her eyes kept scanning the street like her body expected trouble. I told her something simple. I told her she did not need to win tomorrow with clever words. She needed to tell the truth cleanly and then let the systems do their work. Nora nodded. She said she was afraid Victor would twist her words. She said she was afraid Owen would support Victor again in front of others. I told her that may happen. I told her we cannot control what they choose. We can only control what we do and what we keep clear. Nora asked me what I would do if Victor tried to provoke me. She asked if I would stay calm. I told her yes. I told her calm does not mean weak. Calm means I will not hand him a tool. That evening, I went home and prepared like it was any other workday. I chose a plain suit, I cleaned my shoes, I charged my phone, I put my keys in the same place, I went to bed at a normal time. In the morning, I woke up early and ate a simple breakfast. I checked my calendar one more time. I looked at the red circles. I felt no rush, only direction. Nora met me in the lobby at the planned time. She looked professional. Her shoulders were tight, but her steps were steady. She said good morning and kept her voice level. Owen arrived a few minutes later. He walked past us at first like we were not there. Then he turned and gave a brief greeting, polite and distant. He did not ask Nora how she was. He only said the day would be important. Victor arrived with a group. He looked confident. He shook hands, smiled, and spoke loudly enough to be heard. He acted like the building belonged to him for the morning. Nora and I did not react. We stood still. We waited. When the time came, we walked toward the elevator bank together. The lobby remained calm. The staff remained professional. The world looked normal. But I could feel the shift inside my own chest. Not anger, not fear, just that steady clarity again. We stepped into the elevator and the doors closed. We rode the executive elevator in silence. The doors opened onto a quiet corridor with thick carpet and soft lights. A small sign on the wall showed the conference room name. The room itself was already set up like a formal review, not like a casual meeting. Priya was there at the head of the table. Tomas stood near the side wall, hands folded, face calm. Celia sat with a slim folder in front of her. Nora sat beside me, back straight, hands together. Victor arrived last with Marla and Owen. Victor looked relaxed, like he expected a friendly talk and a quick exit. Priya started with a simple introduction. She said this was a building conduct and safety review connected to a tenant event in a building-managed space. She said the building had to protect staff, guests, and other tenants. She said the process was standard and recorded. Victor smiled and said it was all a misunderstanding. He said the dinner got a little messy and people were too sensitive. He said it was being blown out of proportion. Priya did not react to his tone. She nodded once and said the goal was clarity. Then she signaled to Thomas. Tomas turned on a screen at the front of the room. He did not add opinions. He only said the footage came from building cameras in the event corridor and the dining room entrance angle. He said the clips were time-stamped and preserved under procedure. The video showed the dinner area from a fixed angle. It did not capture every word, but it showed posture, movement, and reaction. It showed Victor leaning toward Nora while speaking. It showed Nora staying still while the people around her watched. It showed Victor's hand sweeping across the table. It showed the glass tipping in a way that did not look like an accident. The glass went down, water spread, and the room froze. It showed Victor looking around at faces before he looked down. Then Thomas played the hallway clip. It showed me leaving the room without any dramatic movement. It showed the waiter entering quickly. It showed Victor standing tall and continuing to speak while staff handled the mess. Victor's smile faded. He said the camera angle made it look worse than it was. He said people were reading too much into a small moment. Priya said the building does not judge intent by feelings. She said the building looks at risk and conduct. She said broken glass in an event space is a safety issue. She said public disrespect toward a guest is also a building conduct issue when it happens in a building-managed venue. Celia slid a document toward Priya. Priya lifted it and summarized it in plain terms. She said the tenant lease included conduct standards for events held in building spaces. She said it also included obligations to cooperate with building incident reviews. She said repeated issues could trigger restrictions and formal notices. Marla tried to step in. She said the company would handle it internally. She said they value a respectful workplace. She said they had coaching processes. Celia answered calmly. She said internal coaching does not remove the building's duty to manage safety and conduct in its own spaces. She said the lease terms were clear. She said the building's process was already activated. Priya then opened another file and described a short timeline. She listed the dinner date, the location, the staff report about the broken glass, and witness notes from 2 people who were present and not part of Victor's team. She also referenced that Nora had raised concerns through proper channels inside her company before the dinner, and that the pattern had continued after. Victor turned toward Nora and said she was trying to ruin his reputation. He said she was resentful and could not handle direct feedback. He said she should have stayed in her support role. Nora kept her voice calm. She said she wanted a respectful workplace. She said she did not ask for special treatment. She said she asked to be spoken to like a professional and credited for her work. She said she was talking about conduct and process, not personal feelings. Owen shifted in his chair. He looked down at the table, then looked up as if he wanted to speak. Priya asked if he had relevant information about the dinner event. Owen hesitated, then said Victor was only trying to push the team to perform. He said Nora needed to accept correction. Priya looked at Owen and asked if he understood this was not a motivation speech review. She said it was a building incident review with safety and conduct standards. She asked if he had any factual correction to the footage or the incident notes. Owen had nothing to correct. He went quiet. Priya then stated the building's decision. She said the tenant company would receive a formal notice tied to the event space incident. She said Victor would be restricted from booking or attending any tenant-hosted events in building-managed venues until further review. She said any future event requests would require a named compliance contact and a written assurance of conduct standards. She said security would also apply access limitations for Victor in certain shared areas during peak hours, consistent with the lease and building policy. Victor's face tightened. He asked who had the authority to do that. He said the building could not treat him this way. I finally spoke. I kept my voice low and even. I told him the building could, and it would. Victor looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. He asked who I was to make that claim. I told him my name again. I told him I was the owner of the building through my holding company. I told him I do not manage daily operations, but I set the standards and I support the staff who enforce them. I told him I had already asked Priya to handle this through normal procedure, not personal pressure. The room went still. Marla's posture changed. Owen's face lost color. Victor tried to speak, but Priya raised her hand and finished the meeting steps. Tomas placed a small tray on the table and asked for tenant access cards tied to the event space and executive floor permissions, as required under the restriction notice. Victor stared at the tray like it was not real. One by one, the cards were placed down. Owen placed his card down too, hands unsteady. Victor's card made a soft click when it hit the tray. Tomas collected the tray, nodded once, and walked out. Victor stayed seated, mouth slightly open, as if the air had left the room. Nora did not smile. She just breathed out, slow and